My daughter-in-law smeared my name all over the internet, labeling me a crazy old man just to disgrace me in front of everyone. Out of nowhere, a hacker message, I know her secrets. Want the evidence? I exposed everything to the public, and now she's pleading with me to stop. Tears rolling down her face, and the very next day, she erased her account, but she didn't realize that was just the beginning. Before we go further, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and drop a comment with the current time where you are. The mug slid out of my hand. Porcelain cracked against hardwood with a sharp echo that rattled through my office. Coffee splashed out, crawling across the floor like dark veins, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't look away from the glowing monitor where my daughter-in-law's cruel words burned into me like acid. Sometimes family needs hard truth. Gordon's aging mind is slipping further, and his constant neighbor complaints are a humiliation for us all. Painful to admit, but it must be said. 347 likes. 62 comments of sympathy for Pauline's enduring a troublesome father-in-law. My hands shook as I scrolled down. Friends, neighbors, acquaintances, people I knew now believed I was some senile fool causing disturbances. I reread the post again. The words didn't change. Enshaw, my son's wife, mother of my grandchildren. The woman had just dragged my dignity through the mud for the whole neighborhood to witness. What does this even mean? The words slipped from my lips into the empty office. Morning sunlight poured across my desk, lighting up family portraits that suddenly mocked me. My 3 grandkids smiling at Christmas. Jasper and Enz on their wedding day 5 years ago. And Sarah, my late wife's gentle face framed on the bookshelf. Senile, the word tasted like rust in my mouth. At 65, I'd engineered half the buildings in Sunnyvale Springs. My brain was still as sharp as ever. Yet here was Innes 3 decades younger painting me as a confused, pathetic old man. For what purpose? My trembling hand grabbed my phone and hit speed dial. Her number rang 3 times before voicemail answered. Hi, you've reached Innes? I'm probably out making our community better. Leave me a message after the beep. That cheerful tone so unlike the venom behind her post stung me deeper. I waited for the beep. Innes, it's Gordon. Call me right now. I need answers. My voice came out rough, strained. I hung up, then dialed again. Straight to voicemail. She'd seen my name and rejected the call. A third try, same result. I carefully set the phone on my desk between scattered engineering magazines and an opened mail. My reflection glared back from the black screen. Gray hair in disarray, brown eyes wide with disbelief. When did I become a man my family could silence so easily? The spreading coffee stain bled under my chair, sinking into the wooden grain. I should mop it up. I should get back to my routine. Instead, I sat frozen, crushed by betrayal from the one person closest to family I had left. My chest thudded, my heart, fragile ever since the attack 2 years ago, hammering against my ribs. Breathe, in through the nose, out through the mouth. My cardiologist's warning whispered in my ear. Stress will kill you, Gordon. But how do you avoid stress when your own blood ambushes you online? I shot up suddenly, my chair rolling back against the wall. I paced to the window overlooking Oak Street. 200 yards down, Innes' polished 2-story house gleamed in the morning light. Jasper's car sat in their driveway. He was home. Did he know? Had they plotted this over breakfast while I sat here, sipping my morning coffee? The grandfather clock told 9. Thursday, May 15th, an ordinary morning shattered into something unforgettable. I returned to the computer and read the post once more. The comments had multiplied. Mrs. Peterson down the street, stay strong, sweetheart. Elderly parents can be so hard. Mr. Rodriguez, Enz, you're handling this with such patience. Patience, they called public humiliation patience. My reflection stared back in the glass pane. A man I barely recognized. Not senile, not broken, just angry. The same cold, steady anger that drove me through 40 years of construction projects. The kind of anger that solved problems and exacted revenge. I closed the laptop gently. If Innes wanted a war, she just handed me the rule book. The walk from my study to the living room stretched like a march into battle. I dropped into my leather recliner, Sarah's last gift before cancer stole her from me, and pressed my palms to my temples. Her post wasn't random cruelty. It was strategic punishment. And then it clicked: the fight yesterday about parking rules. I'd been rinsing down my car when in strutted over with her clipboard and HOA badge, looking every inch the self-proclaimed sheriff. "Gordon, these regulations apply to everyone." I looked up, water still running from the hose. "Nonsense ends. I have 3 grandchildren visiting on weekends. Where do you expect Jasper to park when they bring both kids' car seats? Rules are rules." She clicked her pen. "Excess vehicles create clutter and drag down property values." Clutter? These are family visits, not a junkyard. Her smile tightened. "Perhaps you should realize some behaviors harm the neighborhood's reputation. We're maintaining standards." Now I saw her true game. When I refused to yield, she escalated to public shaming. She wanted me broken, obedient. I walked to the front window. Her house dominated the view, razor edges, manicured lawn, and HOA president's plaque gleaming like a crown. She miscalculated. "So this is retaliation," I muttered. "Fine, we'll play, but could I fight my own son's wife?" Jasper had already chosen sides yesterday. He'd stepped out, siding with her like a backup actor in her stage drama. "Dad, maybe we can find a compromise," he'd offered weakly. "The compromise is following community regulations," Inns had cut in before I could answer. "Everyone else manages." And Jasper nodded. My own son nodding at my dismissal. That betrayal sliced deeper than her smugness. I stared harder at their house. The blueprints unfolded in my mind. Inns thrived on public pressure, turning neighborhood disputes into weapons. Now she had ammunition for every fight to come. Remember when Gordon lost his mind? It was efficient cruelty. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw Inns's post. "Don't worry, Gordon. Some of us know the truth. Martin Keller." Martin, 3 houses down. Quiet IT guy. Always frustrated by HOA antics. He'd messaged me privately instead of commenting. Smart move. I slipped the phone into my pocket and grabbed my keys. Enough reflection. Time for action. The walk to Inns's house would take 3 minutes, long enough to think through my approach, short enough to keep the anger sharp, not reckless. I'd spent a lifetime managing construction crews and impossible demands. This was no different, just another challenge needing the right strategy. I locked my door. The crisp morning air hit my lungs, scented with jasmine from Mrs. Chen's garden, laced with school bus exhaust. Life on the street moved on while my world tilted sideways. 100 yards. 200. Her driveway came into view. Jasper's sedan and her gleaming white SUV sat neatly in compliance with her sacred rules. The irony wasn't lost on me. I climbed their spotless steps. Everything screamed perfection: scrubbed concrete, polished windows, curated flower beds. A shrine to control. My finger hovered over the doorbell. Once pressed, there'd be no undoing it. No pretending I hadn't seen the post. No family peace through silence. I pushed the button. The chimes rang inside. Measured footsteps approached. The door opened. Inns appeared in crisp khakis, a spotless blouse, hairstyled like she'd been awake for hours. Her expression softened into fake concern. "Oh, Gordon, what brings you here so early?" The tilt of her head matched her voice, pure theater. "You know exactly why I'm here." My tone was calm, steady. "Delete that post." Her brows lifted in that practiced, manufactured puzzlement. "What post?" she asked. "I post lots of neighborhood updates. Which one are you talking about?" The audacity of the gaslight was almost impressive. I stepped up to the threshold, close enough to catch the math behind her wide, rehearsed eyes. The one calling me senile and airing my complaints, the one with 347 likes 20 minutes ago. She flicked a dismissive hand. "Oh, that one. Gordon, I just share my honest perspective about family struggles. You do value free speech, don't you?" "Free speech doesn't cover libel," I said. "Defamation." Her laugh chimed like wind through a wind chime. "I'm simply pointing out patterns in your behavior. Truth can hurt, but sweeping problems under the rug doesn't fix them. Heat crept up my neck, but I kept my stare steady. Delete it now? I don't think so, she replied. The community deserves transparency from their HOA leadership. Movement in the hall drew my eye. Jasper appeared, still in yesterday's clothes, wearing the weary look of a man who'd been drained by family politics. He stepped beside his wife in a way that said everything without words. "Dad, let's speak calmly," he offered, positioning himself subtly between us. "Not like this, not in front of them." The placement said more than the sentence. Calmly. I widened my gaze to include him. "Your wife just humiliated me in public, and you want calm." Jasper's shoulders drooped. "She's worried about neighborhood standards. Maybe there's truth to some of it, that I'm senile, that I cause embarrassing complaints." My voice rose despite my effort to restrain it. I reminded him about the parking spat that sparked everything, and slid a hand protectively along his arm. "Gordon, this reaction actually proves my point about emotional control," she intoned. The manipulation was masterful. Provoke, then use the predictable reaction as proof. A perfect loop. "Clever," I said, stepping back from their doorway. "Very clever indeed." Something in my tone straightened Jasper. Even Enz's confident grin faltered a fraction. "What are you implying?" she asked. I squared my shoulders and looked at my son one last time. 40 years ago, I'd held him as a newborn, taught him to balance on his first bike, helped with exams, paid his tuition. Now he shadowed his wife like a hired defender, shielding her from his own father. "You've taught me something useful today, Enz," I said. I descended their front steps slowly, every movement deliberate. "You both showed me exactly who you are." "Dad, don't turn this into drama," Jasper called after me. I paused at the edge of their drive, turned, and looked back at the perfect frame of their doorway. "Truth hurts," I said. "We'll see who's hurting in the end." The return trip home felt changed, less furious, more focused. Purpose replaced blind rage. Strategy edged out emotion. Enz had declared war with weapons she assumed I couldn't wield: social media, public opinion, family allegiances. She'd badly underestimated a 65-year-old engineer with 4 decades of problem-solving and nothing left to lose. The sun climbed higher as I neared my house, long shadows slanting across the cul-de-sac. Behind me, I heard their door shut with a final click. She would be refreshing her feed, counting likes and comments, basking in sympathetic messages. Let her savor it for now. I unlocked my front door thinking fast. The coffee stain could wait. More urgent work demanded attention. Time to show Shaw what happens when you pick a fight with someone who spent a lifetime turning impossible blueprints into finished structures. I dismantle her carefully assembled image with the same meticulous planning I used to raise skyscrapers. The afternoon light stretched across Oak Street as I retraced my steps. Each footfall was measured despite the heaviness in my chest. Enz's house glinted with curated perfection behind me. Ahead, my modest single-story home waited like a sanctuary. I opened the door with steady hands, though my mind raced with scenes from the confrontation. Jasper's weak support of his wife echoed in my head. Enz's staged innocence, how she'd twisted my reaction into corroboration of her accusation. My library, Sarah's room, left untouched after she died, called me. Floor-to-ceiling shelves held engineering manuals, classic novels, and photo albums marking 40 years of a life built. I pulled Steinbeck's East of Eden from its familiar place. The worn leather fit in my hands like an old ally. I sank into the reading chair, opening the book at random, hoping for refuge in Steinbeck's steady prose about kinship and betrayal. The words blurred. 35 years building this family, I whispered to the empty room. After Mary's death, I thought the children would remain the anchor, but the text dissolved into the background while my own family drama demanded action. I closed the book and rested it on my knee. Through the library window, I could still see Enz's house. She was probably planning her next social media performance right now, stitching together pity and outrage while framing me as an unstable old man his own son couldn't manage. "She thinks I'm helpless," I murmured. "She's wrong." I paced between the stacks where Sarah's photo watched from the mantel. She'd been gone 3 years, but her voice lingered. "Gordon, you've never backed down from a fair fight. Don't start now." She would have seen through Inz's act at once and called it out. But Sarah wasn't here to protect our son from a bad choice. "Jasper, where is your conscience?" The question left a bitter aftertaste. 40 years of shaping his moral compass, and now he stood with his wife against me. That betrayal stung worse than the online insult. I went back to the window and measured the short distance between our homes, close enough for dinners, distant enough for her to craft narratives without immediate consequence. Not anymore. My planning was interrupted by the doorbell's 3-note chime, sharp and urgent for late afternoon. I checked the clock. Almost 5. Who would come now? At the peephole I found Martin Keller, hands folded behind his back, face set with purpose. Interesting timing. I opened the door wider. "Martin, come in," I said. "Unexpected, but you're welcome." He stepped inside and sat with precise movements, declining coffee. "Saw your daughter-in-law's post earlier," he said, voice a mix of sympathy and resolve. "That wasn't fair to you." He hesitated, then added, "I didn't come just for pleasantries. I have something more serious about ends." The words landed like a gut punch. I sat down, studying Martin's earnest expression. "What do you mean?" I asked. He pulled a manila folder from his jacket like it was fragile evidence. $12,500 last year, at least. "Want to see?" My engineer's brain began calculating consequences. Theft from an HOA, fraud, embezzlement, criminal exposure. Leverage, are you sure? I asked. Martin's half-smile clarified there was no joke. "I filed requests under the Davis-Sterling Act for the HOA records, but I also have other ways to verify." The hint at alternate methods suggested skills that blurred legal lines. IT types often have access where others don't. "What kind of proof?" I pressed. "Receipts, bank transfers, email trails." Martin tapped the folder. "Travel logged as community expenses that were personal vacations, purchases billed to supposed maintenance, phony invoices for work never done." Each detail unfurled like storm clouds gathering. "How much do you have?" "Everything you need to show intent and pattern," he said. "The question is, what will you do with it?" I leaned forward, my analytical mind already mapping options. Public exposure would shatter Inz's crafted reputation. Legal action could land criminal charges. Both routes would send a message. Don't underestimate Gordon Shaw. Asterisk, I need to see Eve. Make informed choices. Martin nodded, clearly satisfied. Smart move. Can you stop by my place around 8 tonight? I'll show you the full picture. My house, 130 Oak Street, just 3 doors down from yours toward the main road. He rose, sliding the folder back into his jacket. Fair warning, what I'll reveal goes beyond simple document requests. The unspoken meaning lingered like smoke in the room. Martin had clearly stepped over ethical lines in his pursuit of evidence against ends. Professional rules blurred when community justice demanded more. "Why risk this, Martin?" I asked. His eyes sharpened. "Same reason you stood up against that parking rule. Someone has to push back against her bullying. The difference is," he added, "I've got tools she doesn't even know exist." After he left, I stayed in the living room as evening shadows crept in. That brief glimpse of the folder had shifted everything. Just this morning I was a humiliated grandfather, mocked online by my own family. By nightfall, I could hold weapons strong enough to end my daughter-in-law's reign of control. The irony was almost sweet. Enz had started this by flaunting her power with a Facebook post, hoping to shame me into silence. Instead, she had awakened something more dangerous, an engineer with nothing left to lose and plenty to gain. 8 o'clock couldn't come soon enough. At 7:50, I locked my front door and walked toward Martin's place, my anticipation rising with every step. The night air carried jasmine and barbecue smoke from yards where ordinary families ate in peace. My own dinner sat untouched in the kitchen, replaced by strategy. Martin answered at the first knock, guiding me through his modest living room to what could only be described as a command center. 3 oversized monitors filled a custom desk flanked by humming server towers. Every cable and connection was arranged with military precision. "Welcome to Mission Control," he said wryly. "Officially, I work in IT security. Unofficially, I make sure justice reaches those who abuse power. I study the display's financial charts, email archives, and what looked like bank ledgers. This is quite an investment." "Knowledge," Martin replied, gesturing toward a second chair, "is the real currency, especially when dealing with people who think they're untouchable." With practiced efficiency, he began clicking through files. Travel costs, $4,200. Now lookins his Instagram posts from Cabo, same dates she billed an HOA conference. Photos showed her sipping cocktails on pristine beaches, while paperwork listed fabricated business meetings. Shopping sprees totaling $3,800 under community supplies. Maintenance invoices for repairs local contractors swear never happened. Personal dining over $1,000. He pulled up restaurant receipts. Noticed the dates. All weekends with Jasper. Romantic dinners on the neighborhood's dime. I tallied the proof aloud. 15 violations, 10 receipts, 5 email confirmations. Enough for legal action. More than enough, Martin confirmed. He printed the documents one by one, building a thick file. The real question is strategy. Court cases drag on, cost money, and often end in settlements. Public exposure works faster. Depends on your goal: punishment, justice, or removing her from leadership. I scanned the evidence spread across his desk. I want her authority shattered, permanently. Then we strike with maximum impact. Martin handed me the completed folder packed with receipts, bank statements, emails, and analysis of her escalating behavior. It felt heavy, like holding a bomb with the fuse already lit. "How did you even get these bank records?" I asked, officially, through Freedom of Information requests and HOA transparency requirements. He smirked. Unofficially, sometimes security systems have flaws that responsible citizens are obliged to report. "You hacked her accounts." I ran security assessments, he corrected evenly. "What matters is fixing the corruption, not how it was discovered." I understood the risk he had taken. Martin had gone further than I imagined, driven by a commitment to justice. What about Jasper? Was he involved? Martin shook his head, scrolling through logs. Emails show ends handling all finances alone. Jasper appears clueless. Relief washed over me. Whatever faults my son had, this betrayal was Enz's alone. "When do we move?" "Tomorrow morning," Martin advised. "Plan carefully. Once this goes public, there's no pulling it back." I left with the folder tucked under my arm like a battle plan. Outside, the street seemed different, quieter, yet pulsing with possibility. By tomorrow, Enz's power would collapse under the very platform she had used to humiliate me. The student was about to surpass the teacher. Morning light filled my office as I spread the evidence across my desk like a general before war. Receipts, statements, and emails, all weapons now. I spent the night checking dates, verifying details, strengthening the case. With methodical care, I photographed every piece. Cabo vacations billed as HOA business. Luxury shopping passed off as community supplies. Romantic dinners on the neighborhood's money. Then I opened Facebook. Once a place of embarrassment, now my courtroom. "Neighbors," I typed, "I must show you the truth about our leader." I wrote with precision, no anger, no insults, just proof. Photos of receipts. Bank statements with shady transfers. Emails exposing her disregard for community money. "Here is $12,500 stolen from our funds," I laid out. "Here are the fake repairs, the vacations, the shopping sprees. Every dollar taken from your HOA dues." I attached images one by one. Each told part of the story, theft disguised as leadership. By the time I hit publish, the post read like a formal case file. Within seconds, comments began. "Mrs. Patterson from Elm Street. Finally, someone said it. Mr. Rodriguez, we suspected this for months." The reactions snowballed. Likes, shares, supportive messages flooding my phone. "Thank you, Gordon. We need new leadership." How did she think she'd get away with this? Leaning back, I watched justice unfold in real time. Yesterday, I'd been painted a fool. Today, I was the neighbor who exposed the truth. Yes, truth hurts, ends, I muttered at the screen. The satisfaction was sharper than any engineering triumph, vindication paired with service to my community. My phone buzzed again, 43 comments, 67 likes, 21 shares. The evidence was spreading through the neighborhood faster than wildfire. By noon, everyone would know exactly who Enshaw really was. Aggressive pounding erupted at my front door, rattling the frame with violent intensity. The pounding continued as I walked calmly from my office to the front door, each thunderous knock confirming that my post had found its target. Through the peephole, Ina's flushed face contorted with rage, while Jasper stood slightly behind her, looking like a man facing execution. I opened the door without haste, meeting wild eyes with steady calm. "You destroyed my reputation," she shrieked, pushing past me into the hallway. "I'll sue you for Leo." "For what?" "For publishing the truth." I closed the door and gestured toward the living room. "Please come in. Let's discuss this rationally." Jasper followed his wife with reluctant steps, his face pale with something between embarrassment and shock. "Dad, you went too far this time, did I?" I settled into my favorite armchair while paced like a caged animal. "Your wife stole $12,000 from our neighbors, Jasper. Exactly how far is too far when exposing theft? Prove it." And spun toward me, her voice cracking with desperation. "You can't prove any of those accusations." I smiled with the confidence of a man holding royal flesh cards. "I already proved it. The whole neighborhood now knows about your Cabo vacation charged as conference expenses, the designer handbags purchased with community improvement funds, the fake maintenance bills for repairs that never happened. Those were legitimate expenses." But her voice lacked conviction, and her eyes darted toward Jasper for support that didn't come. "Sue me with what money?" I continued pleasantly. "The money you stole from the HOA treasury. I'm sure the district attorney will find that interesting when neighbors start filing complaints." Jasper stepped between us, his hands raised in futile mediation. "Let's talk about this calmly. Think about the family, Dad." "I am thinking about family." My voice hardened slightly. "That's exactly why I'm doing this. You think I'd let her steal from your children's neighbors, from elderly people on fixed incomes who trusted her with their money? Went too far." I stood towering over my son. "Your wife publicly humiliated me yesterday, calling me senile and embarrassing. She thought I was helpless. Turns out she was mistaken." Enz's breathing came in sharp gasps, her perfectly styled appearance crumbling under pressure. "This isn't over. I have lawyers. I have connections." "You have theft charges coming," I replied evenly. "Bank records don't lie, Enz. Neither do credit card statements or falsified invoices. Martin documented everything beautifully." "Martin?" Her face went white. "What does Martin have to do with this?" "Everything." I sat back down, projecting complete control. "Turns out other neighbors noticed your spending patterns, too. Amazing what IT professionals can discover when they set their minds to it." Jasper looked between his wife and father with growing comprehension. "Inz, is this true? Did you really take money from the HOA?" Her silence spoke volumes. No denials now. No righteous indignation. Just cornered desperation. "She thought she was untouchable," I explained to my son. "Thought no one would question the sweet young HOA president. Thought her victims were too polite or too old to fight back. You'll regret this." Enz's final threat sounded hollow. I reached for the phone on the side table, my movement deliberate and meaningful. "If you appear here with threats again, I'll file harassment charges to go with the theft investigation." The gesture of reaching for the telephone created instant silence. Both Enz and Jasper understood the implications. One call would bring police reports, official investigations that would make this morning's social media exposure seem gentle. "You can't be serious," Enz whispered, but her bravado had evaporated completely. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." I held the receiver without dialing, letting the threat hang in the air. "Yesterday you thought you could humiliate an old man into submission. Today you discover what happens when that old man fights back with facts instead of fiction." Jasper's shoulders sagged with the weight of revelation. "Dad, there has to be another way." Think about the grandchildren. I raised you better than this, Jasper. My disappointment cut through the room like winter wind. I taught you right from wrong, honesty from deception. Your wife is a thief who stole from our community, and you're asking me to cover it up for family harmony. But the scandal is your wife's creation, not mine. I set the phone back in its cradle, the action somehow more threatening than holding it. I simply provided evidence of crimes already committed. Ends back toward the hallway, her retreat instinctive and defeated. This isn't over, Gordon. I have rights. I have options. You have the right to remain silent, I replied with grim humor. You have the option to resign from HOA leadership before the board votes you out. You have the choice to make restitution before criminal charges are filed. Criminal charges? Jasper's voice cracked. Embezzlement is a felony, son. Your wife didn't steal $20 from a petty cash box. She systematically looted community funds for personal luxury. Bank records proved premeditation and pattern. The legal reality hit them both simultaneously. Enz's face drained of remaining color while Jasper stared at his wife with dawning horror. When you're ready to choose right from wrong, I continued, you know where to find me. Until then, I suggest you focus on damage control and legal representation. They moved toward the front door like sleepwalkers. Their confident arrival transformed into shameful retreat. Enz's designer heels clicked against my hardwood floor. Shoes proudly purchased with stolen HOA funds. At the threshold, Jasper turned back one final time. Dad, I never knew. Now you do. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to fatherly concern mixed with steel. The question becomes what you're going to do with that knowledge. The door closed behind them with satisfying finality. I turned to the deadbolt, sealing myself inside with the sweet silence of justice served. Through the front window, I watched them walk toward their car, and stumbling slightly, Jasper's protective hand on her elbow. More prison guard than devoted husband. My phone buzzed with another flood of supportive messages. The neighborhood was rallying around truth, exactly as I'd hoped. Mrs. Chen had posted her own comment. Gordon Shaw has more integrity in his little finger than some people have in their entire bodies. I returned to my office, where evidence photos still glowed on my computer screen. The morning's work was complete. Enz's authority lay in ruins, her reputation destroyed by her own actions and my methodical exposure. The community she'd exploited now understood exactly who she really was. Finally, peace, I whispered to the quiet house. But this was just the beginning. Social media exposure was merely the opening salvo. Legal consequences, HOA board actions, and community healing would follow. Today I'd proven that underestimating Gordon Shaw carried steep prices. The old engineer still had plenty of fight left. Morning coffee tasted different somehow, richer, more satisfying than it had in months. I settled at my computer desk, steam rising from my favorite mug while sunlight streamed through windows that seemed cleaner, brighter than before. Yesterday's confrontation had left me with the deep sleep of a man whose conscience was clear. Facebook opened to reveal a digital battlefield transformed into a victory celebration. My evidence post had exploded overnight, etched 27 likes, 53 comments, 31 shares. The entire neighborhood had weighed in with unified support. Heroic work, Gordon, wrote Mrs. Patterson from Elm Street. Long overdue, added Tom Rodriguez. She fooled all of us for too long, but you saw through her manipulation, contributed Elena Chen, whose husband had mentioned Enz's arbitrary rule enforcement for months. I scrolled through comment after comment of validation. Thank you for having the courage to speak up. We should have listened to our instincts about her. Finally, someone with backbone in this neighborhood. The angry face reactions weren't directed at me. They expressed community outrage at Enz's documented theft. Neighbors who'd never spoken publicly were sharing their own stories of her excessive regulations, suspicious spending, and condescending attitude toward longtime residents. 50 comments overnight, I murmured to the empty room. The entire neighborhood is against her. My fingers clicked through Tu's profile, curiosity compelling me to see her response. The search yielded a stark message. User not found. Her profile had vanished completely. Account not found. I tried alternative spellings, nickname variations, nothing. Ran away like a rat from a sinking ship. The digital retreat spoke volumes. When faced with irrefutable evidence and community condemnation, Enns had chosen complete withdrawal rather than attempted defense. She knew the evidence was genuine, knew any public response would only deepen her humiliation. Martin's early morning text appeared on my phone. Profile deletion confirmed. Total social media blackout. Also getting calls about emergency HOA meeting. You've triggered something bigger than Facebook drama. I leaned back in my chair, processing the completeness of my victory. Not only had I exposed Enns's crimes and restored my reputation, I'd catalyzed genuine community action. Neighbors were demanding accountability, transparency, fundamental changes to prevent future exploitation. Through my window, I saw the row of homes along Oak Street. Ordinary families beginning their days, but now with fresh awareness of the corruption that had been poisoning their neighborhood for months. My engineering discipline had uncovered the structural weakness in our HOA leadership. Sometimes truth itself is the strongest weapon, I said aloud, recalling Sarah's steady voice pushing me through tough construction challenges. Mary would have been proud of me for confronting bullies. Another buzz came from my phone, yet another supportive message, this time from a neighbor I'd barely spoken to before. My evidence post was doing more than exposing Enns. It was reconnecting neighbors, repairing trust that her manipulations had fractured. I stood and stretched, my body looser than it had felt in weeks. The morning brimmed with promise, not just vindication, but genuine healing. Martin deserved thanks for making this justice possible. The walk to his house felt different than all the others down Oak Street. Neighbors in their yards lifted their heads with respectful nods instead of polite distance. Mrs. Henderson waved from her garden, calling, "Beautiful morning, Gordon." At 130 Oak Street, I carried a six-pack of good craft beer. A small token, but a heartfelt one. The doorbell chimed and Martin appeared, face lighting up. "Perfect timing," he said, accepting the gift with a grin. "Just finished reading 20 new messages from neighbors. Let's talk in the backyard, more private for celebrating." We settled under the shade of tall oak trees, in wooden chairs around a familiar round table. "Martin, without you, I could never have done this." I cracked a bottle, condensation dripping down the glass. The evidence was solid, uncheckable. Justice wins when good people help each other, he replied, lifting his bottle and toast. "You had the courage to act. That takes character." "I owe you more than a debt," I said. He laughed warmly. "The debt's paid. Seeing Enns exposed is reward enough. Look," he held up his phone, scrolling through messages. "Neighbors are calling you a hero. Mrs. Henderson even wants you nominated for HOA president." The screen showed message after message. Finally, someone trustworthy. "Gordon Shaw stands for what matters in this community. What about criminal charges?" I asked, my practical mind considering outcomes. "That's police work now," Martin replied seriously. "The district attorney decides. $12,000 counts as felony embezzlement in California. She may get a plea bargain, but civil suits are certain. Neighbors can pursue damages directly, and the HOA is already holding an emergency meeting this weekend. Removal looks unanimous." The weight of those words settled between us. Enns faced not just shame but criminal exposure, civil lawsuits, and permanent exclusion from leadership. Justice had entered the proper channels, all sparked by a carefully timed presentation of facts. "Sometimes good people need each other," Martin repeated softly. "You brought the courage, I brought the tools. Together we protected this community." His phone buzzed again. "Board secretary," he noted. "They're moving quickly." 2 months later, my garden reflected Sarah's dream. Roses bloomed in careful designs she had laid out before her passing. On July 17th, I sat among them, official papers spread across my wrought iron table like trophies of justice. The first letter, stamped with HOA letterhead, stated, "Enns Shaw is permanently removed from all board positions for financial irregularities and violation of fiduciary duties." The audit revealed $150,000 siphoned over 18 months. Then came legal updates, 20 civil lawsuits filed by neighbors for damages. The criminal case ended in a plea deal, misdemeanor embezzlement, 1 year probation, restitution ordered. No prison, but a permanent record and total social exile. Walking past 145 Oak Street days earlier, I'd noticed the for sale sign planted in their perfect lawn like a white flag. Jasper and Enns were leaving Sunnyvale Springs for good, unable to bear the daily reminders of disgrace. The house that once represented their social dominance now stood as a monument to their downfall. Gordon. Mrs. Patterson had called from her driveway. "Thank you again for saving us." The new board is incredibly transparent, fair, focused on real improvements. Such encounters had become frequent. Neighbors expressing relief, recounting frustrations with Enns's arbitrary rules, and celebrating restored harmony. The emergency meeting had passed new bylaws requiring financial oversight, electing leaders committed to service over control. Martin, with his skill and integrity, was made treasurer. I declined the presidency, preferring an advisory role where my engineering background could help without stealing my peace in retirement. Among Sarah's roses, I reflected on Justice's strange arithmetic. Enns paid a price for theft and manipulation, and the neighborhood gained a new culture of accountability. But Jasper, my son, remained collateral damage. We hadn't spoken since the showdown. Martin said he'd seen Jasper around town, looking older, weighed down, trying to process the scale of betrayal. "Justice has been served," I whispered toward Sarah's favorite yellow roses. Maybe one day Jasper will understand. Maybe he'll remember what I tried to teach him. The garden wrapped me in peace, growth instead of conflict, quiet instead of chaos. No social media storms, no courtroom drama, only renewal and the satisfaction of knowing I defended principles worth more than popularity. Sometimes doing right costs relationships, but integrity outweighs convenience. Sarah would have understood that sacrifice. Evening shadows lengthen across Oak Street, in a neighborhood where justice had finally taken root. If you liked this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left.